Thanks everyone for coming out. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I don't know if we've done a panel before, but yeah, this will be really good. I'll get the panelists to introduce themselves in a moment. I want to do a couple of quick thank yous. First, thank you to VIATEC, who makes this space available for us. VIATEC is a great business organization. I've been a member since 2009, and in fact, am the chair of the membership committee on the board of directors. So talk to me if you're interested in joining. Very modest individual membership fees and some great corporate rates as well. And thank you as well to my company, PlusROI Online Marketing. We buy the coffee to keep us all caffeinated and awake here. We're leaders in search marketing. We're what's called a Google Premier Partner, which means that we're the top 3% of Google agencies. And yeah, do a ton of Google Ads, Google Search Marketing, AI Search Marketing, and websites content creation. Anyhow, if you or anybody you know is looking to grow their business, I'm always available for a fun brainstorming session. And yeah, with that said, let's jump right in. And first, maybe I can ask each participant to do a quick 30-second intro. Maybe start with Declan on the end.
Sure, thanks. Hi everyone, my name is Declan. I run a company called Encompass Business Solutions. My background is in software, but I've spent my career helping technology companies, primarily, or sorry, not technology companies, trades companies, integrate technology to help make their jobs and lives and administration easier. So, and with the kind of introduction of AI in the last few years, I've kind of become an obsession of mine, and
I can identify with that.
yeah, and so finding some really cool use cases to help people who have either no understanding of it or loose understanding of it, really harness it to make them more efficient and productive.
Steve, yeah.
My name is Steve Harris. My company is AI4 Enterprise, and I've been in technology for a long time, 40 plus years now, and my focus for the last couple of years has been helping organizations adopt generative AI sensibly, methodically, managing risk, understanding the organizational change components, as well as doing technical work with the organizations as well.
My name's Rachel Krayenhoff. I have a few different things that I do, but primarily my brand is Ingenuity Labs, where that specifically focuses on helping women entrepreneurs learn and apply AI in their businesses. I also do AI advisory for small businesses. My background's in accounting and operations, so a lot of education on using frontier models for workflow optimization.
I'm on Jolliffe, and like Rachel, I'm into a bunch of different things. Today, well, Victoria Data Society, if you haven't heard of us, I'm a director.
Good promotion.
Sorry for the
Let's
slump.
go in.
Sorry for the slump. But you know, my day job is I am an associate partner in a private equity firm. I focus on accounting and IT. As everybody knows, a lot of the tech companies these days are all AI focused, so I get to spend a lot of time working with AI in growing companies as well as large organizations that want to streamline, and then also tying that into accounting and finance workflows. A bunch of different industries.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'll mention too, there's lots of seats in here if anybody else wants to sit down. We're a very friendly bunch. They all seem to have migrated to the corner there, but
Why is
John, I
everybody
don't know
sitting
what
at the
you're
front?
doing there, but
You can ask everybody questions at the front or something? Like nobody's
yeah, this is
It sounds great.
so there we go. So a couple of quick notes about today. What we're really hoping to do is uncover some insights about just the myriad of solutions and tools that are out there. With everything going on, we're having a discussion beforehand about how it's impossible to keep up with things. And that's one thing I loved about these AI meetups is I actually get to feel like at least I know a little bit about what's happening. And I think having been close to 2 years now, full on into AI, it feels like the more you learn about it, the more you feel you don't know about it, because there's just so much out there. So with that said, yeah, I've been hoping to get some insights from this group on the different tools. I mean, in my own experience, I found a few things, like Claude has become my favorite of the LLMs, although it's its sharing workflow isn't great unless you're going to upgrade your whole Teams thing. So we've actually migrated into Gemini within my own organization for most of the tools and gems that we create. And Google is pretty awesome for the workflow if you're in the Google workspace environment. Copilot really seems to have a lot of strengths on the Microsoft Enterprise environments. And ChatGPT I still use, I have subscriptions to all the big four. ChatGPT I still use for kind of lifestyle stuff and research, but I don't think I've done anything professional with it for quite a while. So I am really curious to hear the takes from the experts we have today. And I'm gonna prime the pump with a few questions and some stuff that had come up. I would encourage the audience, jump in, ask questions. Remember, we got 4 people that are very knowledgeable in their areas, so they're gonna say things that probably us mortals don't even understand what they're saying. So don't, particularly Steve likes to use a lot of jargon. I'm joking, but don't hesitate to just stop when we're using jargon or something happening, and ask a question, share an experience. This really is a participatory group. I think I successfully pronounced participatory there.
Good job. Well done.
A tough
How many
one.
tokens is that?
So let me start. Let's do the opposite of what sometimes happens. Is start with a quick lightning round of questions where I'm going to pose a question and basically 10 seconds. Don't think about it. Just answer, and we'll keep going with Declan on the end and work across. So, Declan, if you had to delete every AI tool except one tomorrow,
Claude.
what stays and what? There we go. Steve?
For my business, I would keep the Microsoft environment and Copilot, but for my personal use, it would be Claude.
I would say Gemini, but it depends on the use case. For me, it's really hard to choose between Gemini and
You have to choose right now. One.
Chosen Gemini.
Oh, Microsoft Copilot, 'cause it supports everything.
All right.
Pretty much.
All right. Well, we're gonna ask. I've got another question around that possibly for later, but and you know what? Let's just go back and forth. So starting right here. That's what. So where does your preferred platform fall down?
It falls down in that it doesn't have the newest stuff right away. Yeah. And there's a bit of a delay. And the delay is because they want to make sure that it's safe and secure and governed and compliant. So yes, you can have the fastest thing right away, but you're opening yourself up to potential issues. That's what Microsoft does. That's why they're always a little bit delayed. They want to make sure it falls into their governance compliance technology stack, because that's what their customers expect of them.
For Gemini, the reason I will switch to Claude is because Gemini doesn't have the same project memory segregation capabilities that Claude and ChatGPT has. If they did have that, I would hands down be in Gemini most of the time.
So I'll stick with Copilot, the Copilot theme, but for a slightly different reason. I find I've been doing a lot of work recently in automation in the Google workspace, and then if I compare the Google workspace to trying to get the same thing done in the Microsoft environment just takes more effort to just get something done. You end up having to wander off to other areas of the tenant to assign permissions to the person who's trying to do the work, and it's just a little bit more difficult. But in its defense, that's what an enterprise would expect.
Or should.
Should expect, yeah, that's
they
probably
need.
a better word, yeah, should.
Yeah.
I think, well, I've used all of them, and I think from a personal perspective, Claude's kind of a dick. Really, that's
It's true, yeah.
But beyond that, on a serious note, the biggest thing that I find struggles with is image recognition or image analysis. Gemini is so much better, and obviously Claude can't really generate images, so I don't think they really focus on that capability. But in some of the projects that I've worked on, image analysis is really, really important.
Yeah.
So that's where I find it falls down.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead.
None of you have talked about Grok, and I'm curious.
We don't talk about Grok here.
Well, the question was preferred platforms and where they fall down.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to, DeepSeek, Grok,
Yep.
we can go off in all sorts of directions there. But I think are most of us in the sort of major 4 platforms?
I personally haven't really used Grok much, so I'm not really
I've used DeepSeek in Olama with a local deployment. Quen as well, I use Quen with local deployments, and Quen it's awesome for agentic work.
Yeah, kind of what's the we don't talk about, the absolute kind of, it seems like there is a contempt for Grok, and I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I don't know.
On a personal / political note, I wouldn't touch it unless there was some hugely compelling reason to do so.
I'm the same way, like personally, their guardrails in terms of especially what they're allowed to generate in terms of images.
Okay.
Because of just where that line is, I just choose not to use that.
That's a fair point.
I come out of a military background, so I stay away from anything that doesn't have good governance compliance.
Okay.
Yeah, it just creates its own friction, right? Like, what you do over here affects the market over here, right? So they've done it to themselves.
Steve?
So this brings the thing that's always been wondering to me is there now a need of an AI officer in an organization between the privacy officer and the CTO? And where are we heading in that direction with what you're all saying about privacy usage and what that may happen? Because this AI officer now is gonna provide one of the most important roles in operations, on marketing, on data recovery, on everything. So what does that look like?
I definitely agree. I don't know, and I'm hesitant to get too technical here, but the roles that are coming up with AI now that an AI officer could start to spearhead is when it comes to organizational spec and intent engineering for how data is organized so that their chosen AI agents know what information to gather for which project. And so that skill of understanding what AI needs in terms of data and file management is going to be really, really critical.
I'll add to that. Steve hasn't been prompted to ask me this question, but I offer a fractional CIO service because of exactly that sort of problem. You can see, if you look across an enterprise, you think of enterprise risk management, you think of procurement, you think of portfolio management, project management, all these different aspects of running an organization. It doesn't just affect the process, it affects the operation of doing those things. So pick procurement. Generative AI could help automate that huge portion of the procurement life cycle, but it also affects how the procurement team would think about procuring things that contain generative AI. So there's a whole span of implications across an organization that really needs somebody to focus in on what those implications are, because the risks are significant and need to be managed.
Yeah, I have a second part to this. So I work in insurance. We work with large corporations and enterprises across Canada, and now anything that's been generated by AI, or if there's a component that you're using to do that, has a full exclusion in their commercial general liability now. It's coming out, and the first companies just come out with failure to perform for AI being utilized within your company. So that's something to really be aware of. It's probably another session we could do. But anyways, it's interesting that's finally come out. We've been pushing it for about a year and a half now, and finally seeing someone stepped up to say, hey, you're talking about from a military background, you can just imagine failure to perform, you build something out of this, and then this happens, and then of course who's gonna pay for it if it goes wrong?
That opens a real can of worms, because the depth around failure to perform, using generative AI artifacts, the depth around that could be complicated to work through.
I'm mostly worried about IP, or using, is it removing watermarks, is it doing all those things as well too? Yeah, so anyways, that's a whole other talk story.
One thing that's not very well known, I don't think, is that Microsoft does provide indemnification for everything created by Copilot from copyright, which is also one of the reasons why you can't do some things with it, right? It won't create a McDonald's image for you, for example, right? So I thought that was pretty cool. They came out with that about a year ago.
Yeah, it is good.
On a funny note about the watermark removal, we actually have a large law firm client who we created a gem tool to create images for their content, and discussed with them the watermark thing, and they're like, oh, we're totally comfortable cropping out the Gemini watermark because they don't own that material in the first place. So we're as a marketer, I don't really go too deep down the legal rabbit hole, but just funny that the law firm is totally comfortable to review one.
Are these just generic images for their website?
No, these are actually for blog posts
Okay.
and LinkedIn posts, and just a quick tool that follows their brand guidelines and creates unique images instead. So, anyhow, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to be quick. Just going back to the like open source models. You should try Kimi 2.5. Yeah, like right now, I know that it's a Chinese one and all that, but just experiment with that stuff because it's just like a next stage. That stuff actually can make, you just prompt and can actually make professional websites. Like I would say that is even better than Manus or a bunch of stuff. So in my experience with the Grok stuff that somebody asked, is that at least like the feedback that I have is that Grok is being used more for emotional or trying to make a like connection with human beings, because the the conversation style and all these kind of personas that you can choose there are oriented to like your sexual friend, your motivation friend, your other friend. So I think it's like a different market.
You're saying
So,
it's Kimi, K-I-M-I?
yes.
Yeah, I'll get that later to you. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, sure.
So I'm kind of weighing up whether I want to transfer from ChatGPT to Claude for various reasons. I just published a book and I'm starting a business using ChatGPT as my chat friend. And it will answer questions about my book and about my business that are like show incredible depth. And I'm wondering how I transfer that over to Claude. But I just discovered that Claude isn't great at images and I use ChatGPT for images all the time.
Yeah, you can jump around on that. I'm quickly just going to jump in because with the whole stuff that's going on with the Pentagon and ChatGPT and Claude, in Claude's newsletter today, they were mentioning, and I had heard that this existed, but you have the ability to get your memory out of ChatGPT and input it into Claude.
See, I asked Claude that and it says I can't do that.
Well, that,
Can now.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so we actually published a prompt, like they gave you the full prompt to get ChatGPT to do it.
If you go into Claude's settings, I can't remember where exactly it is, but it's within memory. There's a button that says, and it's a window that gives you the prompt that you then put into ChatGPT, and then there's a button that says upload memory. And then you can just continue using ChatGPT with its existing memory context for your image generation, but then Claude now becomes your main model.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question? Why?
Why do I want to switch?
Yeah.
A, because co-founder of ChatGPT gave
Okay,
25
yes.
million, is that one?
Yeah.
The Pentagon thing, the mass surveillance, the autonomous weapons thing, those.
Have they actually agreed to that with their agreement with the Pentagon? They have actually agreed to that?
Mhm.
Okay.
My understanding was they had the same red lines, or very similar red lines to Robert.
Yeah.
So, which was outlining no autonomous killing,
Yeah.
and no mass surveillance. So,
That was the question I had for myself, was if OpenAI has gone in with the same red lines and effectively has just replaced Anthropic within the same context within the Pentagon, have they actually done anything different to what Anthropic?
Well, did
But if
they
they've
not-
gone beyond to the point you made, then that's something different. Sorry, you had a comment.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking when I read the press release was that there's probably some bylines and like things that they're not sharing in like fine print,
Oh, I see.
that they agreed to a certain point that they can go around those red lines,
Interesting.
is what probably OpenAI agreed to and Anthropic did not. And that is something that was not made public to us. Like, I wasn't able to find any information on that, but that is what I'm thinking kind of happened around that.
This is interesting. Oh, sorry, you have it.
I was just gonna say, there was a rumor or a leak from an employee of OpenAI who basically said that they agreed to ignore those red lines.
Interesting.
Essentially.
All right.
Yeah.
But this whole conversation is interesting. You very quickly, in any conversation with any client, quickly move from the technical capabilities to the impact on society, the impact on jobs. And this conversation has followed that path really, really quickly. Interesting.
Greg? Yeah, along those lines, I saw layoffs of 50% recently with Twitter, TikTok. And my question is, AI, there's very little seems to be being said about the displacement of labor as it relates to AI's emergence. Does anyone care to expand on that a bit, or is it?
Sure, I'm quite happy to talk about that.
Yeah, thank you.
Atlassian came out, what, yesterday, day before, 1,600 people as well. And I wonder, if there's a little bit of a smokescreen going on about overhiring and just using that as a market signal to say, we're adopting AI as opposed to we made a bad decision 3 or 4 years ago and we overhired, and we're just basically doing what we shouldn't be. We're undoing what we did. So I think there's a little bit of that, but I think there is definitely something around artificial intelligence driving enhancements in productivity that is pushing people out or stopping the hiring of juniors. Right? And one thing that I've been really surprised by, particularly in BC, is the lack of union recognition of what this could actually mean.
Why do you think that is, I wonder?
Probably because the same reason that we get engaged with clients is because there's a lack of awareness of what this technology is and what it can do. So in the last 2 years of working solely with clients, even this last month, going into a room, talking about what can be done, showing what can be done, and it's, sort of eyes wide open.
Yeah, there
Right,
was
so I think it's just lack of awareness. Go ahead.
There was a recent stat from Nate B, for anyone who follows him. He said that 80 out of 200, I think, employees on average are deemed coordinating employees. And so the skill and role of coordinating tasks between the skilled, the experience, not experience, but the deep technical abilities of those employees, and coordinating of that is now being replaced with AI. And so it's those coordinating roles that are being displaced the fastest.
One of the things that I found, just kind of as I've been teaching my customers and clients how to implement it, is domain expertise is really important. Like, I think if people overlook that, they kind of rely on these models to basically be the replacement, but actually that's not where the value is, and I find that actually hurts your business. Very often it's taking someone who knows something deeply about a particular topic and then applying AI on top of that, and now you have someone who's 5x, 10x, 20x more productive. Whereas if you use it as a replacement, I think it's actually a net negative, even if it feels like a net positive.
I think we had something over here.
There's so many.
Yeah, I mean, my view is, I think to your point, we will need maybe 20% of employees to do the same job, and that's where those risks are, and an impact on labor market. But I'm curious also on whether you've seen the latest study from Anthropic on actually impact of AI on the different jobs and job families. And
I posted a counterpoint on that. There was a lot of doom and gloom on LinkedIn. This is going to be terrible. I saw that. The post I put out was, I see this as an opportunity.
Yeah.
But organizations can go in 2 directions.
Yeah.
They can use that capacity to cut costs, and they'll end up in a spiral because we've got Copilot co-work coming out. At some point, there's going to be OpenClaw for the enterprise, and Microsoft's going to come out with OpenClaw. That's just the natural path they're on. Or you take that capacity and you do a better job of what you do now. You address new markets, you invest into organizations. And I think what will happen is they'll accelerate away from the low-cost providers. The low-cost providers will just smile. I don't.
It's also, I also saw a graphic was posted by Stephen Bartlett. He basically showed, he had it was however many rows of gray dots, and it was then there was a couple of rows of green dots, and then one red dot. And he said that the red dot is the people who actually use AI systems in their entire business process or workflow. The gray dots, which was 80% of the graph, was people who've never used it or have never even heard of it. So he's basically his point was we're so early, and so we don't really even know what the ramifications moving forward are going to be. But I think like Steve said, we're sort of lopping off the low cost, and hopefully the people that rise above will be the ones who offer something that AI can't replace or replicate.
So the issue of job loss is obviously very important, and it gets a lot of media attention. Every week you hear some company that's laying off people, significant numbers of people, and they blame AI. But one of the things that we don't hear in the media is the reverse problem. The reverse problem is AI, because of the productivity it can do to enhance people's productivity, means you don't have to hire as many people. I've got a startup company. I've been in software development for 40 years. I have a very small team of people. And quite frankly, what I like to think is that we have 2 developers, but we have a team of about 10. Because the 8 others, we call them cyber shoring. They're really the full-time equivalent people that a traditional company would hire, but we're not hiring because of the tools like Claude, like Copilot, whatever, that are massively improving the productivity of the individual by generating code that, of course, we vet and filter. But as somebody who's been around in software for a long time, I am just blown away at how fast the people I've worked with can generate code. I mean, it makes me feel almost like a dinosaur.
And I imagine you've probably seen it as well in software. I mean, one of the most common things I've dealt with in my software career is like you never have enough time to roll out everything. There's always technical debt. There's always things like that you need to address that doesn't, like core feature set or whatever. And so I find that sometimes you think, okay, we don't need to hire as many people to do the task, but also here's all the things that we never had the time to get to anyway that we can now attack. So there's kind of like, it's not all doom and gloom in the sense that like, oh, we don't need to hire as many people, but that also means that the people that we're using can be way more efficient and actually more quickly accomplish the goals of our organization.
There's a caveat. There was a recent paper study, I think it came out, maybe it was the Harvard Business Review, which studied software developers and discovered that they're incredibly more productive, but they're also not as happy. Because they are doing more things, and yes, they're more productive, but they've got so many things on the go, and some of the things they just create a lot of not confusion, but I'll call it stress, because so much more is happening, and the human brain gets tired very quickly. And they found that people's attention span during work hours is dropping because they're much more intense at, say, doing software development, and they get tired more quickly, but the productivity is much higher.
Yeah, I've run into that with an actual client. It started to happen in the last 3 or 4 months. I generally run into 4 types of resistance within an organization. That's the impact on jobs generally, the impact on the environment always pops up. The fact that the models use copyrighted materials to train the models. And the last one that's popped up more recently, speaking exactly to that point, is it started to affect people's view of what they like to do. I actually had somebody talk about this directly in a session I was doing that, well, we're going to automate part of the job that I really like to do. Right? So it's starting to not just affect jobs, but people's sense of their own worth within their jobs. So I've seen that manifest itself.
Sorry, just one thing. For anyone that's interested, that's in software development, VIATEC has a monthly software leadership roundtable. We had it here yesterday afternoon, and if you are, we'd like to get more people involved in it. So that's the place to talk about software and AI. So you talk to Rob Bennett to get involved in that.
That's not me.
That's not you. Yeah.
I really like your comment about like domain expertise and like being looking to focus on that. And then related to the conversation around like, you know, decreased hiring and job layoffs, what advice would you folks give to, so I'm mentoring a comp-sci student right now in 3rd year, and his parents are like, what do we do? Because I feel like that junior developer, fresh out of university, just learned to code, kind of job is going away, right?
Yeah.
So like, what advice would you give someone like that? You know, is it learn some domain expertise in like cybersecurity, for example, or you know, in terms of like making them marketable to get a job going forward?
Yeah, I think basically the skills that make you a good programmer or software developer, they're more than just being able to write code, right? Like problem solving, and even like there's obviously problem solving and there's the soft skills that come with managing relationships and things like that, which are always going to be important. But the reason that people are good software developers is they're solving a particular problem, whether that is a software problem or a problem for someone that paid them to solve the software. And so really understanding there may be an adjacent interest that comp sci student is interested in that may be an opportunity for them to leverage their technical ability to help solve a problem that may on the surface be non-technical. And the thing is like very often the best use cases I've seen for AI and automation is they're not sexy. They're not like, they're just like, oh, this is a really annoying thing we have to do that takes us a week. How can we do it in a day? And now they're like, great, we can do 10 of those in a week as opposed to one. And the revenue opportunity or marginal like improvement in profit is significant, and that creates tremendous value, even if half of it or maybe not 80% of it's done by a machine. But you're the one who orchestrates it, so that's where your value comes in.
Yeah, I would, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just say for students, you guys should be attending as many hackathons as possible, and as many as you can.
Yeah, I would echo the sentiment there. Definitely, my clients are not so much interested in the revenue generating side of their business because they're highly focused on that. They're really interested in how do I clean up and manage my back office, right? The unsexy sort of boring stuff.
Yeah.
But just in general, from a developer's perspective, keeping up with the trends in software development, right? And we are moving, and we have moved. I don't know about your approach, but I went from VS Code plus Codium and Windsurf last year to Claude Code in December, and my approach is completely changed. So keeping up to speed with that process, so when they leave or when they're on their internships or whatever, they're ready to go.
That's an idea for another session. It's like even as a developer myself, like and using the VS Code and the plugins in there, I feel like I'm a year behind. It's all agents doing everything, or agents orchestrating other agents to do all the things, and that might be.
We have had a couple of talks on the technical track around that, and on the software development side with regard to students. Do you remember the one we had where we actually got asked to leave because there was a group of about 10 people, and they were UVic students and people in the programs, people just about to graduate, recent graduates, along with experienced developers, and they sat here until we were ready to be. Literally, we were asked to leave. So there's huge interest in that.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that.
Completely.
Yeah, and I am going to take a moment and shift back a little bit to kind of some practical topics. While we've got this group of experts here, I selfishly want to understand some how to solve some challenges, and I would encourage anybody to questions of using AI. Like this is your moment. Like this group will be able to help you. So I'm going to kick off by just saying I have learned in the past couple months, like that if I go to, and you talk about the importance of detailed prompts and detailed instructions for gems or GPTs or Claude projects, and I have found where if I do too long a prompt or too detailed a prompt or too detailed a tool in terms of a GPT, it actually starts to get worse. And I'm just kind of understanding, maybe you could share some of the principles around not having that happen, or how long is too long, or how we, and Rachel's smiling, so maybe
the first thing I think is that it depends on which model you're using. So Claude loves that. So Claude is so much better at, I can't remember what it's called exactly, but it's really good at finding a needle in the haystack, is the generic term for it, which means that if you have, say, a project within Claude with a huge stack of instructions within your project folder, and then you have a very specific prompt that you give to that project folder, it is the best at pinpointing exactly what it needs within the layer of context to give you a more accurate response. Whereas I've noticed that, especially in Gemini. And so it's that skill of being able to find the needle in the haystack.
Yeah, to kind of echo what Rachel was saying, I have this concept that I've kind of been working on called the company brain, which basically is like imagine a knowledge base of everything that your business does, your projects, your clients, everything kind of roped into one sort of internal system. And I was originally going to use ChatGPT for it, but I found exactly that problem, was once the context got too large, ChatGPT just went off the rails and was making stuff up that I was like, where did this even come from? So I started testing with Claude and Claude Code, and obviously with its middling context window, it was dramatically better, but also it had that unique capability of finding specific information that I was like, how did you even find this? And also it's really good at generating its own memory. So if you have, particularly in like a Claude Code project or repository, one of your system instructions could be everything that you do, create like it's called a principles document, where it basically takes everything that's done in that particular session, and instead of writing everything out as one big long document, it summarizes it and adds it to a principles doc. And then every time you run it, it just does that, and that document gets longer and longer and longer. But what it does is it sort of learns how you operate, both as an individual and also as a business. So then the next time it runs, it's just a little bit more refined, Because yeah, you end up with this problem where I was trying to manage scale, because having 3 projects and 5 clients is very different than having 300 projects and 500 clients. And you need that information to be coherent across the entire, every session that you run.
So slightly different approach. I would take, just listening to the problem you posed. I've run into this analyzing qualitative data from survey responses, where I try to do too much in the prompt with too much data. Right, so the first thing is have a prompt template, a structure. There's loads of them out there. To think about how you construct your prompt, and then think about how much data you're actually trying to process within that prompt. And I've definitely found that the more focused I can make the prompt, and more focused data set, I can just get better results. Right? So part of it is stepping back from the problem and looking at it and going, am I trying to do too much here with one prompt and a huge set of data? And you can still do that, but and I'm biased here, I'll jump to code and start building agents in code. But there are other ways to do it. But first of all, from a prompt perspective, template, am I trying to do too much with the prompt? And do I have too much data? Should I just be narrowing the problem focus?
And to kind of add to your point about your comp sci student, one of the things that I found really effective, and particularly with Claude Code's sub-agents system, is you really got to think about how each individual's problem can be addressed, and almost like you're writing a job description for like a person or employee. And so it's like, okay, you have a writer, and then you have a code reviewer, and you have an analyst, and you have a researcher, and you just really think hard about what type of problem that specific person or agent is trying to solve, and that really helps kind of prevent that drift, where you have one AI system just trying to do everything, and it just fails.
Well, if you give them each key names, does that help?
Pardon me?
If you give them each key names, does that help?
It's actually recommended.
I agree with that approach wholeheartedly. I've got a set of agents that will take a Word doc, will convert that to Markdown, extract that into JSON, and then you can process the structured data much easier.
Yeah.
Because it's closer to the basic set of tokens that model can process, as opposed to we've got to extract it from a PDF. We've got to do all of this work to wrap around it. I try and break the data down into a much more native format. And I found JSON just works.
I think we had a question in the back or something.
I think my question was just answered. So I use ChatGPT right now, and I'm starting to get into Claude Code, and I'm Claude Code curious.
You should jump in.
Yeah.
That's right.
One of my challenges is this bleed between, broadly I'd say I have 3 very distinct hats where I engage with AI. One is it's creative writing, which is, I'll call it a hobby because it doesn't pay yet. And then corporate finance, which is a very different kind of language. And then work with a charity, which is again, very different language than the corporate finance for governance reasons. So they're really very different roles that I can distinguish between. And I would find chat would just sort of be bleeding into them because it doesn't know where I'm going. Creative language versus good governance.
There's sort of 2 ways you can approach that. One, you can have an individual ChatGPT subscription for each one, in which case they're entirely segmented. You could use projects, but I find even still, for whatever reason, the ChatGPT memory system still references projects, even though they're supposed to be isolated, which is what Claude does much better.
Right. With different Claude agents.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Cute names.
Yeah.
Well, custom GPTs work as well. You could basically, or you could have your one ChatGPT subscription, but then, like Steve said, use custom GPTs. The problem with custom GPTs, I find, is you have all this great infrastructure like projects and everything that the ChatGPT sort of interface has, and then we use GPTs themselves. It kind of steps out of that and it's sort of like a sub-module of that.
Yeah.
So you don't get the full functionality, but it might solve your specific problem if it's very, very like
Very
specific.
siloed, but
Yeah.
maybe Claude agents would make sense.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits and like with co-work or Claude Code, the way that it's architected is designed to be kind of unique sessions, but you can spin it up in a way that, like I said, kind of what I was referencing with my memory system, is you can, even though the session may be a brand new session, you can still have a point to memory that you used in the past for that specific organization, so that way it doesn't bleed over into the general chat interface.
We can give you a concrete example of the custom GPTs.
Yeah.
I had a client who had a member of the staff who had a custom GPT for sending emails or constructing emails for different departments in the organization. Because legal wanted to be talked to in a specific way. Procurement, marketing, they all wanted to be talked to differently, and he had his voice, so he would just put it through these custom GPTs and then get a customized output spoken in the voice of the recipient. So it was particularly effective for him.
I'm just gonna break for a second and ask, does everybody know what a custom GPT is? Have a good sense around that? And for those not familiar with it, it is just, it allows you to create your own mini GPT within ChatGPT that has very explicit instructions. So in that example, your author could have one custom GPT with very specific instructions about the style and type of language you use, the values, what you're trying to accomplish. Whereas for finance, you can have a totally different set of instructions. So it basically, and you basically just go and use it like you use ChatGPT. Instead of going to the regular ChatGPT window, you just go to a custom GPT window and there's your chat where you can enter it. And they're super straightforward to create.
How is it different than a project?
So within a project, and this, I actually wanted to add on to this kind of leads into the last conversation. For your kids, where you have very different memory that you need extracted from, I would say that project within ChatGPT. And I'm curious, did you explore with turning the setting on where memory is specific within the project?
Yes.
And so even then, memory was still leaking?
I found that it was hallucinating information from other projects that I had no business referencing.
Right.
I don't know if that was like, this was 5.1, so this has been a couple versions ago. Maybe whether it's been improved or not, I don't know. But
Maybe living in your personal memory.
Yeah.
Not the.
It could have been as well, right? So it's like, it's one of those things where I found, because I've been using ChatGPT for so long, prior to the introduction of projects, it might just be this accumulation of garbage that is just kind of generated.
So, for your point, I would use a project when I have like a very specific project that I'm working on, where I want memory to build for that very specific thing. But then, if I want a specific skill, which means like if I have a consistent input where I need a consistent output, then I would build a custom GPT. And within Claude, I know that you can use, they're called skills, basically. You can build a skill that you can refer to in a project, so you can use the skill and the project. And I think you should be able to do that in ChatGPT as well.
Yeah, skills is relatively new, but actually they introduced it.
Yeah. Oh, ChatGPT.
I'd like to point out that all of these problems don't exist in Copilot.
Okay, I was just going to speak up for Copilot in a second, but
Okay.
I don't completely agree with you.
So yes, but yeah, I just want to mention that having stuff bleed into one another, it doesn't happen, right? And the thing about Copilot is this secret thing in the back end called Dataverse that indexes absolutely everything you can imagine that you have access to within your environment. They've had this for 2 years. So when you ask it a question about something, it has all the context, including stuff you don't even know exists. And not only that, but it also points you to where that is coming from so you can validate it every time. And if someone else is working on your project and is working with that customer and that data is stored in the same place that you all access it from, that's taken into account as well. So all these things and these workarounds do not exist in this environment. There are some, I'm sure Steve's going to say there's a little thing that doesn't quite work.
No, I'm not going to say that. All I was going to say is I think that Microsoft environment is a little behind for all of the good reasons you said. So if you look at the parallels, in Microsoft Copilot environment, you have, they call them agents, right? Copilot agents. That's the equivalent of a custom GPT. The screens look the same. And now we've got notebooks in
notebooks
M365. That's not as good as OpenLM, and it's roughly equivalent to a project in ChatGPT. But yeah, it's very, very similar functionality, but I completely agree. And with the new IQ layer that they've introduced, the work IQ layer, I'm still trying to get a handle on what it is. I think it's a semantic layer that they put over the top of the database.
It also has your corporate identity. So you can build your corporate brand kit of all your graphics, your colors, and your images, as well as your corporate speak. And everything created in your organization takes that into account.
That's true, actually. Even when you go into PowerPoint and you can create a presentation from file, you have the ability now to select a corporate template.
Yes. So all the graphics I create within Copilot, I can select to use my brand. You pick different brands for different marketing campaigns you have, and you share it out, and it really reinforces that your company speaks the same thing. And one other thing I want to mention is speaking in those different languages from those different functions. With shared mailboxes in Microsoft environment, I have one for accounting, and I got one for HR, and one for operations. Each one of them has its own, let's call it prompt or identity, where I say, you are an accountant, you've been doing it for 50 years, speak in the language and grammar that people expect you to, and it actually writes differently depending on which email I send it to the mailbox.
Well, that sounds very cool. And there's a gentleman over here that had a question that we never got to hear, so I'm gonna go over there for a second.
That's okay. Yeah, I was just wondering about, I've switched over from GPT to Claude semi-recently, and one of the reasons was when everyone was mentioning how it's better at getting the context from the prompt. But what I found, I think the gentleman in the back, when different functions, I even broke it down further rather than just having marketing skill in Claude. I now have a newsletter skill, a blog skill, because each example that I give them, I don't want it to bleed. I don't want the newsletter to then bleed into a blog and it to be convoluted that way. So I'm not sure if you've tried that, where it's less about like maybe a function, but maybe you've tried splitting into like the email newsletter GPT or Claude or whatever it is, if that's worked for you or not.
The more specific you get with the skill or the GPT, the better. Because like you can create as many skills and GPTs as you want. You only have to use them once if you want to, right? So definitely.
This is a little bit of a tangent, but very similar. So I was trying to do some research stuff, not like scientific research or anything, but just more like we're gathering stats for a case study, and I want to make sure the stats were like legit and reference, and there was like sources. And I did took advantage of the opportunity to like run it with Gemini, because we're Google Workspace, so naturally Gemini is the easy, cheap version. And then I did ChatGPT, and then I did Perplexity, which I've never used Perplexity before, and it was like the clear winner in that area. It was, yeah, I actually was thinking like, is Perplexity even relevant anymore? And I wasn't sure, but so I did Gemini, and basically what it did, I basically gave it the same prompt for all of them, and asked them to basically, it was like pulling up case studies where like luxury brands were successful at deploying e-commerce agents, and like the metrics, the business metrics that run behind them, right? So Gemini went through and listed all this great stuff, and then when I asked it to like reference it and avoided that, it actually changed its story to find the link. So, and I couldn't find any data that it was claiming. So I don't know if it was maybe behind a paywall or something where I couldn't see it, but basically I couldn't validate it. So I said, well, forget that. If I can't corroborate it, I'm not gonna send it to a client, he's gonna ask me. And then ChatGPT was good. It like had all the links like there, but it was really bland. Like the case studies were just not very inspiring. But then Perplexity had the really good, more like headline-y, like Gemini case studies, but it was linking, and I found even, you could even like select a chunk of text and actually just right click and it automatically pulls you up to the page and searches Control Fs and tells you where that came from. I don't know if you guys have any experience in that, the various models. I only tried 3, but it was a eye-opening for me, the value of like Perplexity as sort of like a wrapper around a bunch of models.
Yeah, I found like Perplexity still to this day, when Steve and I were talking about Perplexity earlier, one of the features that I used to love about it was how they used to create a website from the like results that it provided, which was super valuable. You can publish a website, you can share it. I don't, like we were talking, we don't know if it still has that feature anymore, but they killed it off. But I find that like where the models really shine is when they're designed, because Claude focused on a little bit more in the enterprise market at the beginning, when ChatGPT was kind of like the everyman's AI sort of thing. And I think that's where Claude kind of snuck in and took the lead, because ChatGPT was trying to be everything to everyone. Claude kind of really came in and was like, hey, we're gonna, I mean, even to this day, the user count for ChatGPT is insane relative to all the other models. I think that's obviously because it's the free version. But when you really take, like, knowing what model is like good for what use case is really powerful. Because when you use something like Perplexity, you get way more value in its strengths than you would from any of the others. Just like I was saying, how Gemini is fantastic at image analysis relative to like ChatGPT is good, it's pretty bland in its image analysis. Claude's not very good at it. Claude is excellent for creative writing and for context management. So just really knowing where one falls, because it's like there's no one size fits all, and there's going to be a preferred model, but that's the one you use 80% of the time. But knowing how to bridge that 20% gap is going to be huge.
Way to go. Yeah, I jump on that one. I used to be a Perplexity subscriber, and I cancelled it about 3 months ago or so because the Google Deep Research was doing a good enough job. It wasn't quite as good as Perplexity, but it just wasn't worth paying the subscription because Google's Deep Research gave me all the links. It actually, I found when I compared it to, similar to you, Mike, gave it the same prompt, that there was greater coverage from the Google Deep Research model than there was from Perplexity, which is no surprise given Google's search background.
Is that available on Workspace then, like Gemini is?
I've got a subscription, so yeah, you just
buy
click on the
the
thing
Google
and it's got
Deep
Deep Research, and you just use the Deep Research model.
And that's not the same as using the Gemini?
No, you have to select the Deep Research.
I'll try that next time. Yeah,
That's definitely worth a shot. And it was enough for me to just, it wasn't quite as good, but the marginal difference versus it just wasn't worth it.
I wonder if Notebook LM has a similar strength to Perplexity in the way where you click on the source and it gives you a very direct link to where it was found too. So that might be another.
Yeah, Notebook LM is just a fun place to work.
Microsoft has sources on everything.
It does.
Everything. And it has for 2 years.
So we've got a question in the back. But first, we got a question in the back over here, but I am curious, who in the room is using Google?
In a business environment. Big difference.
Yeah, no, so we've got some folks, that's good. I was just curious, I mean, I've got it, apparently I've got it, I've never actually used it. But yeah, no, I mean, this sounds incredibly appealing, actually.
I know.
But,
It is good. It's really
why aren't you their like spokesperson?
I am. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to flip the conversation in the other direction. We've been talking a lot about how to adapt the tools for our workflow, but going back to what you were saying about it's kind of like hiring somebody and looking at the roles are and all of those things, and picking up the earlier conversation on the AI officer kind of thing. What are you guys' thoughts, thinking, experience around guiding organizations in evaluating their needs and changing their definitions of things, adapting the organization to use the technologies? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. I think from my perspective, it's a maturity process. Right? You start off building that AI muscle and AI understanding, the limitations and the opportunities that the tools bring, before you start re-engineering business processes, introducing agents into the environment. But it's definitely an opportunity to look at the business processes you've got and optimize them. Because if you don't, all you're doing is automating a process which could maybe just suck, right? So use it as an opportunity at some point in your maturity process, not necessarily straight out of the gate, to look at business process re-engineering.
Instead of just sucking faster?
Yeah.
Just making the biggest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same as business. The whole outsourcing movement, right? Business process outsourcing. If you don't have your processes sorted out before you outsource them, you're just outsourcing a bad process.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get swamped with change requests, and the service provider's going to make a stack of money out of you because your processes are poor.
What they want to point out is that what we're paying for AI right now, this is the bottom. I just think it's going to go dramatically from here.
Do you think so?
Yeah, and there's two main components to AI, right? We have chips and we have power. What's happening to power right now? We're seeing a 25% bump in cost. And I just saw posted today, someone I know who works with Claude at AWS said that non-technical developers are spending $5,000 a day US on Claude tokens and just wasting.
Oh, yeah.
And even the Claude code, you know, the max plan, whatever, is getting major value for it. It's very, very discounted. And at some point, someone's gonna turn the taps off and you're gonna see a massive increase. So get efficient now and don't use AI for everything. Use AI to automate all your business workflows. Today, once you still can. I have some automations I put in place that Copilot helped me build 2 years ago. They saved me 30 to 45 minutes a day and they've been running for 2 years. They don't cost a thing.
I'm gonna add to that to kind of wrap it up. I would actually, a good starting point is just education. When you educate your staff on how to use the frontier models that they're already using, they're going to optimize their own processes just by understanding how to use the basic capabilities. So starting there is where I would recommend.
I want to quickly put Mike on the spot, because he's on his phone. Do you think AI is gonna, teasing. Do you think AI is gonna get more expensive, or do you think it will get more efficient over time? And I know you've worked with some of the models that are way more efficient than the big ones, so what's your take on the affordability side of it?
So for some context, we work with like product teams, like people building AI systems, so we help them make their AI systems more efficient. So like the next generation of AI products that you would use, we don't really work with like SMBs or organizations adopting it per se, like a lot of, I think you folks are doing. But on the product side, I think it's all about migrating, because all these product companies are basically just thin wrappers around frontier models, but they're specializing in a certain area. So like I'm a legal tech company, I sell a legal tech platform, like Harvey or something, but I hit, you know, Claude for every single one of my things, but I'm activating this massive model just to ask legal questions every single day. That doesn't make sense, right? Because the model knows the entire internet's worth of information. So what we're doing, or we're seeing a trend, is using open source models, developing through like distillation, fine tuning, whatever, models that are smaller, much leaner, more efficient, and specialize in these tasks and domains. And then that means that when everybody uses these products, it's just overall the compute in the whole world is a lot less because these models are specialized and just asking the same, whereas the generalist models are really reserved for like higher order agents that need to sort of have big context, like management context, and they're the ones that get put to the frontier models, the labs, and that's sort of like the way I see. So I think the cost would impact sort of overall.
It's really interesting you bring that up because I actually watched a video earlier today. It's actually, the guy was likening to the music industry because he was saying in the 70s and 80s when they had like an actual recording studio, like equipments were $750,000 for mixing board, like there's the building leases, they had multiple rooms. It was a very expensive process, $2,000 a day to record in the studio. And then the first digital audio workstation came out and people started moving into home studios. And he's basically was likening those recording studios to data centers in the sense that the data centers, he thinks, are going to be used for like the training of the frontier models, but the actual use of the models themselves are going to slowly move their way as hardware gets better to locally based, very specific, like you said, very specific use cases. So if you have the hardware compute in-house to run a local model that's only required for one specific type of task, you don't need to go and deal with these frontier models that have, like you said, the internet's worth of information. I thought it was interesting parallel.
I completely agree with that, with what you were saying there, Mike. Even with my own agents, I use Quen locally for certain agents, and then when I want something more, something larger, something more complex done, I'll pump it off to OpenAI's API and then use another model for something else that's local. So, and even then, some of the other developers in the room, I've not tried it, but Tune is another supposed to be a prompt optimization library that cuts down on the number of tokens. So there's lots of optimizations.
I'm going to jump in and share that we're at 1 o'clock. So anybody that has to leave, feel free. There are still a few hands up, so I may as well keep the panel format going. And there's a gentleman over there that hasn't had a chance to ask yet. So
yeah, I guess kind of on this topic about like how to like manage your usage, I suppose, and your credit count as well across various platforms. So if you're running local models, like what's the best way to do that? To run, like, if you have Microsoft, you're going to need Microsoft for all your communications. If you want to do your back-end support for an SME, essentially, like for like large industry, not try to support like small business. What's the best way to do that? To kind of run locally and
and still be able to access all the features of each platform. I'm specific.
I'm not sure there's a best way. There's a best way for the users. Right? So you look at the use case you've got and the problem you're trying to solve, and then you select the model type, how you've got it deployed, and even the model size. You can go as small as, I don't know, Mike, if you looked at like Gemma 270M, so, Google's Gemma models for 270 million. It's tiny, absolutely tiny. Or you can run something as large as, what do I run, like 14 billion parameter model on an Amazon EC2 instance, and it just runs with a single GPU just fine. So it's use case specific, and I don't know. Sometimes to me, it almost feels like a bit of an experiment. Like I'll point an agent at a local model to run something, and well, that's not quite right. I'm going to just flip it over to one of the guys' API and just see what I get back. I feel like it's a bit of an experiment.
Yeah, you mentioned like prompt optimizers as well too.
Yeah,
so
to
you have that in your pipeline for your like whoever's your orchestrator is going to like send it to another model.
Right.
You could be like, okay, I need to send it to my prompt optimizer before I send it to the model.
Yeah, I don't
so
know.
if you have a prompt optimizer agent.
I don't know. I've only read about two, and I've not tried using it. I don't know if you have a prompt optimizer agent or it's a library that's built into the actual Python that you're writing. It does the optimization beforehand.
A really great tool to experiment with, like just models too, is something like OpenRouter, where you basically just have one API key. They're not local, obviously, but it has all the local models like as part of the system. And so you can just like in whatever interface you're using, you can just switch model and you can just try and see how it performs for your use case. It's really cool, and then you just get something like I think it's called OpenLM, which is like downloadable. It's the same idea. You just put in your local model, install it, and now you have it running on your machine. But you've had the chance to experiment.
It's a great idea. Yeah, the experiment. And installing Obama with a model takes.
I think we're getting a little technical for our business.
No, really?
It's like John, I thought John, you had a question for me.
Yeah, just a practical question. I want to write a book. Which one should I use?
Claude.
Okay, and if I want to write a technical manual, same question, same thing.
I would say the same answer, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I can go for lunch now.
I could go.
I would completely differ.
Yeah, go on. I think I'm going down the same path as you, I think.
Yeah.
You going?
What I really like about the Microsoft suite now is, I guess for about 6 months, they've just had the voice enablement, right? Every single product that they talk to, and they all have it, right? But it's just built right in and makes it really easy. I find that, I mean, Microsoft also has their notebook equivalent product if you really want to get things constrained. But what I like about it with the writing that I do is I just brain dump everything anywhere in my system. The little tag at the top. It could be an email, it could be a Teams message, it could be a document, anything, and then that's what I'm using to pull my stuff together, my thoughts.
Yeah, there's other behaviors as well that started coming on the Microsoft front with the agents that they've been releasing. So you have a Word agent, Excel agent, or it's now what's been rebranded to Edit with Copilot.
They keep changing the name.
Yeah, they keep
Change
changing,
back
literally
after
changing the name.
Microsoft
So they're putting they're putting agents in front of the applications. So you can have a dialogue with the agent, and then it will create the document, or it will create the spreadsheet. And if you haven't tried the Excel agent for people who do finance, the Excel agent is something to see.
But I'm already posting everything's in my Google Docs.
Then you just bring it in and reference it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So this brings up an interesting question, which I do want to ask, is at this point in the maturity of it, how much is it the platform, and how much is it just learning to use any of the platforms?
That's kind of what I was saying about the domain expertise. Like I think again, like there's billions of websites, each contains its own information. Just like the platform, there's tons of local models. There's the 4 or 5 frontier models, but it's really just like experimenting and figuring out what works best for you, and then just running with it.
Yeah, I think I jump on something you said earlier, where knowing which model suits the task for you. Because definitely for me, ChatGPT is my general conversation. Claude, straight to Claude code, link to GitHub, just worthless. Gemini, replacement for Perplexity, and then Copilot, because that's where my clients live and that's where my tenant is. I love it for working on documents. So use case specific. I don't think there is necessarily a learn this platform and everything will be good. I don't think we're that mature yet.
I think it also depends on the workspace that you are on. So like the Google workspace benefits highly from being integrated with Gemini. And then obviously Microsoft and Copilot. So there's different, like very small capabilities within Gemini that I love. Like I've been working with Google startups forever, and those capabilities of just being within the ecosystem is insane. So,
And I use all of them. I probably should have started with that. I manage a number of Google tenants for my clients. I use Gemini on a regular basis. I use Claude all day long for different things. And again, all paid, all the big high-end ones. And for me personally, with all my businesses, the fact that Copilot talks to everything natively is the biggest time saver you can possibly have. I never ever worry about getting something that is not 100% accurate. And that is really what it comes down to. I don't have to re-prompt it, I don't have to qualify it. And using it for this period of time, it really knows me. And it's all about how you store your documents. It all comes down to data governance, making sure you're storing your stuff properly. I had a discovery meeting yesterday with a client in person, and what I did is I set up a Teams call, even though we're in there, shared a screen the entire time, we talked the whole time, and now I have an unbelievable document it built as a proposal because it had all that context. Like, I saved myself, and I didn't take a single note. Okay? And not only that, but you also teach the Microsoft environment your voice and your face, and it separates you from everything else going on in the conversation and in the video. I wouldn't give Teams my face to give to Revlon though, so they have these Revlon filters.
Okay.
Yeah, all the different
Revlon, the makeup manufacturer?
Yeah, all the different makeup companies have filters
sure
in
you wouldn't do
Teams.
that?
I didn't. I was looking at it, oh, that might be cool. I could look like somebody that would look like. But it just has such a cohesive environment that absolutely everything that you could possibly need is there. They're not going to be the best of everything, but it's going to be 99% of the way. I don't need the environment most of the time for anything. That's kind of my final thoughts on it. Not trying to sell anybody on it. This is just my thing. I use everything and I respect everything.
Yeah, well, it sounds super attractive, that, although I think again, like, I've got two organizations embedded in workspace, like it's just not.
Doing a change is difficult. I help people do it all the time. The one thing I want to mention is that everyone's like, oh, Microsoft's expensive and complicated. It's 20 cents more a month for the license. Okay?
Carmen, you have another question?
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to articulate it properly, but I'm curious if companies are moving from trades, like companies are moving from like a software that they pay for every month to using AI agents to like do scheduling, like procurement, all the things that like a like that a company with trades would do.
So the specific problems that I run into are very often my clients either have no technology whatsoever, like no technical literacy, or they have a bunch of systems that don't talk to each other. So, and very often what happens is once you start to introduce one, kind of solve one problem, it's almost like a hydra, you cut its head off and two more appear. And that's in a good thing, not in the sense that more problems are created, but they have more ideas for how they want to leverage the technology to do more things. And so, for example, I have a client that is building a specific tool to do, like Rob actually got me onto them, to basically do roof inspections. So they essentially take photos, they make some notes, they send it off. These reports would normally take their estimators or their writers like a week to put together. Now they just we've trained a model that can do it in like 5 minutes or 10 minutes and analyze all the images, take the notes, compile it into a cohesive branded report. They just do a manual review to make sure there's nothing that's not accurate. It takes them 5 minutes to edit it, and now they have a report. So it's saved them a tremendous amount of time. And they, as far as AI concerned, they know it exists. It's like this ethereal thing that everyone's talking about, but they don't really know how to apply it in their business. That was one very, very specific problem that was solved. And now they're like, oh, maybe we could do this. Oh, I wonder if we could do that. And it's like, now you have to have, that's kind of where the value of people who really understand the technology comes into play, because they can lean on like us to basically be like, can it do this? What its limitations here? And you can answer those questions in sort of an educational way. So it's like for me specifically, it's taking people with no technical literacy and being like, instead of you just getting a bunch of systems that don't talk to each other, let's maybe start from the ground up. Or if you already have a bunch of things, let's cut the fat and just focus on the stuff that actually can solve like very specific problems for you. So scheduling is a huge one. Like I had I have a bunch of HVAC clients who say, like I had a survey and they have like 10 plus hours a week on scheduling. And so it's like, well, that's a very specific problem to solve. It's like the framework is there, but like they're just like, well, it's easier for me to do it manually. I'm like, well, is it? So we're working on managing scheduling and scheduling of like contractors while also dealing with other trades on site. So you have, I need my guys to go to a job site, but I have to make sure that this other trade has done their work before they can show up. And so just coordinating all that, it's been a really interesting problem to solve. We're getting close, but that's it.
Scheduling pops up. The other thing that I see in the enterprise space is people's interest in expensive applications that they have. It turns out that there's a small number of users that use it. They don't use all the functionality, and the applications don't have the functionality that they need, but they pay a ton of money every year. And because re-engineering is becoming extremely low cost, there's a lot of interest in re-engineering those applications because the cost of engineering has gone down so much. At the moment, that's just interesting.
I feel like we've kind of reached a natural point here where I want to, first I'll mention everybody's going to be around for a little while afterwards, so individual questions, this is your chance for some free consulting from our experts here. This is what everybody here does professionally, is consult in the area, so get in here with your questions and make the most of it. And just, yeah, big thank you to all our panelists.